Okay. Hello, everybody. Good morning. And my name is Meeuwisse. I'm a professor of social work from Lund University. And I think that's on behalf of the whole research group, I would like to thank you very much for this invitation. It's an honor to be here, and we are very pleased to be in Rome and to be in this place and to be able to share some of the results from this survey that you've already heard some very nice introductions of. But I want to be a little bit more concrete, and maybe I should start with presenting our research group. It's Christian Kroll and Helena Blomberg Kroll from Finland, and we have Silvana Modeglia and Paolo Guidi from Italy, and Roberto and Scadamanzino and myself from Sweden. And we want to, let me see here we are. No, this is how we want to organize this presentation. So I will start with a short introduction of our research project and our research questions, a little bit about our theoretical framework. I will also talk a little bit about the research methods and the empirical data that we have collected, and this will be in English. But then Paolo will present some results concerning the working conditions of Italian social workers, and this will be in Italian. And then Roberto Scadamanzino will talk about Italian social workers' opinions and attitudes on welfare, and that will also be in Italian. And finally, Helena and Christian will share some results from our comparative analysis of social workers' opinions when it comes to both different regions in Italy and comparisons of the countries that we have studied. So I will start with the background then. So this study was originally a Nordic study, a Nordic research project, which was a collaboration between the University of Lund in Sweden and Helsinki University in Finland. And our main research question then was whether there is such a thing as a Nordic model of social work. Scholars often talk about different welfare models or different welfare regimes, a liberal one, a cooperative one, a Scandinavian one, etc. But some also propose that they are connected to different models of social work. So the point then is that the welfare models determine the conditions for social work and determine how social work will actually be shaped and carried out. And we were, among others, inspired by Walter Lorenz and his book, Social Work in a Changing Europe, where he argues that it's possible to distinguish 4 different types of social work in Europe. So via a Nordic comparative approach, the aim of our original study was to examine the similarities and variations in social work in Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Norway, focusing on social workers. And we conducted both qualitative and quantitative studies. Our qualitative studies focused on childcare work in 4 metropolitan areas in these Nordic countries. And for example, we examined the considerations and ideas that govern social workers' actions and decisions. We did that through a vignette study built on fictional but realistic child welfare cases. We're not going to talk about that today, but that was one of the qualitative studies that we did. But we also made a large-scale survey directed to social workers in these countries, and which we also later on, a few years later on, repeated in Italy. And it's some of the findings from the survey data, the very large survey data that is presented in the report, and that we will also present some of the results today. Why then is it interesting to study the attitudes of social workers? This has already been discussed by Sylvia, for example, and so I think you have already some ideas about why it's important. But we thought that it's important from several reasons, not only from a professional point of view, but also from an academic point of view and from a general point of view. Social workers can be considered the backbone of the welfare system. As Michael Lipsky, that was already mentioned before, he pointed out many years ago, he said that social workers play a crucial role in the implementation of national and local welfare policies. So how policy is implemented depends furthermore to a large degree on something that Sylvia was mentioning before, on the discretionary power of the social workers and in their day-to-day work, on their interpretations and on their values that guide them. So through their discretionary power and implementing role, social workers can in fact be seen as the makers of social policy. And this also means that awareness and of their opinions and attitudes may also illustrate how our welfare systems function in practice. So that is very important. Studies of social workers are also interesting when we consider, in the light of the restructuring of the European welfare states since the 1990s that we have witnessed. And that has also been mentioned here already. Due to economic crisis and ideological and political redirections, we have witnessed a quite drastic changes in the organization and management of welfare services in many countries, in Italy, but also in the Nordic countries. And this means that in their function of street-level bureaucrats, social workers are not only likely to actually see the consequences of these drastic changes and the effects, but they are also affected themselves. They are affected, their working conditions are affected, but they are also affected in a way that because they get new types of tasks, new roles. So social workers have been entrusted with the duty of carrying out many of the new types of social policy measures that have been adopted. So, for example, concerning how to work with poor people and unemployed, various types of activation policies, for example. So this development makes the question about the relationship between official policy goals and the views among social workers even more crucial. And not very much research is done on this area. So it's seldom researched. Very little scholarly attention has been paid to social workers' attitudes towards social policy. So there is also a research gap to fill. And we think that the attitudes of social workers become even more interesting with the comparative approach. We have done this now with 5 countries, and our hypothesis was that the welfare state context plays an important role in shaping social workers' attitudes. And the Nordic countries, on the one hand, and Italy on the other, could be argued to represent quite different welfare state systems. So this could then enable us to test the importance of welfare state contexts. We have, on the one hand, we have a Scandinavian social democratic welfare state model with a strong public sector, which offers a wide range of risk coverage, rather generous entitlements, and where the public sector bears the main responsibility for the production of welfare services. And on the other hand, we have what is sometimes called a Southern European model, which to a much greater extent relies on private solutions to social problems, especially from the family and civil society, but also that is also characterized by regional differences. So the research question would then be that to what extent are diverging welfare policy traditions and systems reflected in the views of social workers compared to the importance of other variables at individual, organizational, and local levels? So this type of analysis could contribute to answering the question of whether attitudes and perceptions towards social problems and social policies, if they are mostly related to national, normative, and institutional factors, or if they are rather related to professional social work doxa, something acquired through education, something that most social workers would agree on, independent of welfare systems. So the survey then, we have in fact then conducted 5 surveys addressed to a representative sample of professional social workers in Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Italy. And this was a rather extensive questionnaire with a lot of questions. It took, I'm sure it took quite a long time to fill it in. Because we had questions about working conditions, a lot of questions about working conditions, questions about perceived characteristics of social work, what's its typical social work in your country, but also about how social work should be developed according to the social workers, if they could choose. Furthermore, we had attitude questions concerning causes of poverty and attitudes towards unemployed people. And these questions were used from we used questions that are also used in the European database Comparative Welfare Survey. So this means that we can also compare not only within the countries, but with other countries as well, and so on. And furthermore, we of course also asked questions about the respondents' age, gender, education, work experience, and type of work. And most of the questions were identical, but we had to do some adaptations in the Italian survey to make it meaningful in Italy, but mostly it's identical questions, so it's very possible to compare. And the empirical data that we have then, as was mentioned before, we got an answering rate of 60% in the Nordic countries and 49% in Italy. And this is fairly good. It must be considered satisfactory nowadays. It's hard to get high response rates in questionnaires nowadays, so this is a good result. And this means that in total 7,569 social workers from 5 different countries have answered this survey. 2,809 from Sweden, 1,299 from Finland, 743 from Denmark, 703 from Norway, and 2,718 from Italy. So this is a rich material indeed. And now you will hear some of the results from the survey. And thank you for listening, and I give the floor to Paolo.